I would like to welcome Professor Dr. Talit Pasha, Vice Chancellor, University of Education. Welcome, sir.
Assalamu alaikum. I am Zaima Farooq, Senior Lecturer, and I am here to welcome you on this auspicious webinar on the future of university education in the COVID-19 world. This webinar is a joint effort of Rashid Latif Medical College, Rashid Latif Khan University Proposed, and Pakistan Institute of Living and Learning. Before we begin, I would like to show my immense gratitude to the highly esteemed speakers and legends from academics, research, and practice who have spared time for us today and to enlighten us with their expert views on today's topic. I would like to convey my special thanks to the leading personality, Ms. Sabahat Khan, Chief Executive Officer, Rashid Latif Medical College, and Professor Dr. Aftab Mohsin, Principal of RLMC, who have always focused on the professional growth of the students as well as the personnel. And I would also like to specially thank Ms. Sabahat CEO because she always lent us her hand in these events, and I would highlight the astounding efforts of Professor Dr. Nashi Khan, who is Director, Counseling and Wellness Center, RLMC, and the Project Director at RLKU. And Dr. Nashi is a leader in her field and a workaholic to perfection. And I would also like to show my gratitude to Professor Dr. Nadeem Chaudhry, CEO of Pakistan Institute of Living and Learning, for the joint effort on this webinar and always focusing on the prospects of learning and education. So now we're going to formally begin our webinar. I would like to invite our very esteemed speaker, Professor Dr. Nusrat Hussain, Professor of Psychiatry, Director Research, Global Mental Health Division of Psychology and Mental Health University of Manchester, with decades of experience in research on mental health, devising plans for implementing strategies for the betterment of community and leading an institute. With this experience, we are privileged to have you with us, sir, and kindly share your expertise on COVID-19 and student mental health challenges and solution. Sir, the forum is yours to speak now.
Achha, thank you very much for inviting for the talk. I'll try and stay within the 8 to 9 minutes of my time. But thank you very much for the introduction. It's so ego-boosting introductions in Pakistan. It really makes a very happy start to the day. So, pandemic, mainly what, as you know, I'm working for the University of Manchester, PhD students. Obviously, we have got medical school as well and many other. It's so next slide, please. One of the things which we have been learned about has been saying, you can't hear me. If people could put their mics on mute, that may help. So Aisha, can you help with people putting that helped? Okay.
Sure, sir.
So my focus would be mainly around suicidal ideation, self-harm, and suicide, and what we can do about this to try and prevent it. As you can see from this WHO slide, and I want you to focus on the right side and look at the top. And it is about people age 15 to 29 years old. This is the group which we are talking about mainly, where it's already been known about a leading cause of death. So this is before the pandemic. And if we go on to the next slide, if we start to look at it in the perspective of what's been happening during the pandemic. So we have made this huge transition and where people struggle to even work with students with mental health problems face to face. Then you bring in the complexity of working through online and working through media. It was not only about teachers developing those skills, it was about students and the parents as well. So it was a much wider group who was part of this teaching and training them. And then if we talk about low-income population in the UK, there's a whole issue about digital exclusion. If you take that, extrapolate to Pakistan, it would be even much higher. So a number of complexities. We know about Pakistan is a young nation. Up to, probably it's half of the population is under the age of 30. So we also know, if we talk about the mental disorders, that the mental disorders, 50% of the disorders start before the age of 14, and 75% of the disorders start before the age of 25, 30. So young people. So there's a lot of scope about prevention. Next slide, please. आयशा आप मुझे बता देंगे जब 2 मिनट रह जाएंगे मेरे.
Sure, sir, I will.
अच्छा. So about the treatment gap. So treatment gap is huge. Like even if we talk about UK, it would be one, maybe if we look at the population between rural areas, urban areas within the UK as well, there's a fluctuation of how much is the access to appropriate mental health care. And if you take out the average, it comes to about half of the people would receive treatment of mental disorders. And we would be talking about mainly common mental disorders. But if you know about early intervention in psychosis movement, even people who were hearing voices and seeing things when nobody was around, even for them, it was taking up to 2 years to get into the treatment. And if we bring it back to a place like Pakistan, it would be hardly 1 in 10 people who would receive appropriate treatment. And then we need to look at in the perspective of the student population, which we are talking about. I think the whole bit about recognition is also much lower. Can we go on to the next slide, please? Another thing which we have started to look at within the UK is about the long COVID. So the National Institute for Health and Care Excellence have brought in a definition, have started to talk about what is going to be the treatment for long COVID. The symptoms can also include headaches, depression and anxiety, but suicidal ideation as well. I have come across colleagues and students in Manchester who have talked about one common symptom was fatigue. People would have other symptoms as well, but you could not rule out suicidal ideation as well. So that is worrying thing. And the number of people who are developing long COVID is quite high. People are talking about maybe 10 to 15% of people who have had COVID would have long COVID. If we use the example of UK, we already have 1.1 million people with this probable diagnosis of long COVID. The other worrying thing is, and when I'm talking about the UK perspective, we have got to look at, if we take it to Pakistan, it's going to be with limited resources, it's going to be much higher about meeting the needs. We have our new health Secretary, Health Minister Sajid Javid, originally from Pakistan. And he mentioned day before yesterday that the waiting list for accessing NHS treatment is increasing very rapidly. So 11 million people are waiting for treatment from NHS. Next slide, please. So those are the issues around everybody's talking about. Some people have used the words, things like mental health tsunami we should be anticipating. But at the same time, while we are anticipating, we are talking about depression, anxiety, fatigue, headaches, suicidal ideation. we need to start preparing for what would be the solutions. So this is something which we did. We know about rates of self-harm and suicide, though not officially recorded, are increasing in Pakistan. So we had this grant from MRC, and we did a large trial with 901 participant therapist-delivered intervention called CMAP. And these were the patients who were presenting after self-harm, not only to hospitals, but from the community as well. Next slide, please. And what we found was there was significant reduction in suicidal ideation, hopelessness, depression. It's manual assisted interventions. So it's the likelihood of scale up is quite high. Next slide, please. I'm not going into the details of the study. I'm giving an overview because we have only got a few minutes, but people are welcome to drop a line and we'll be able to share more details. So when we were doing the work with the adult population, we were being approached by A&Es, doctors and others that we were excluding a very large population. So when we recruited 901 for the trial with adults, we had to exclude more than 200 young people, adolescents. So we went to MRC again, and we got funding for what we called Young People's CMAP. This is a trial which is already ongoing. We have randomized, I think, more than 300 participants right now. It's likely to be one of the largest trials in the world with 625 people to be randomized. Next slide, please. These are serious self-harm attempts. If you look at it, this is part of the qualitative study. You know, the fatality ratio is very, very high with this group. And the first one, if you look at, I can't study. The whole environment is disturbed now, and that's why I feel even more stressed and tense. So imagine the pandemic going on, our adolescents and young people going through this stress. Look, think about overcrowding, think about small houses, think about noise, and then you have to write your exams, do that, and very important years. It kinds of, some people talked about, these are your making or breaking years. So serious self-harm attempts, serious concerns about education sector. Next slide, please. It's again a manual assisted intervention. They uses the principles of CBT. And again, whenever we are doing any project, we are already thinking about how it's going to be scaled up. Next slide, please. Before coming into this project, which we are doing with schools across Pakistan, and in YCMAP, when the lockdown started to happen, we made this transition to digital delivery. And that is what I'm going to talk about, are the opportunities right now that we can make that leap in Pakistan, that if 1 in 10 people are able to receive appropriate treatment, if we use digital interventions, we are likely to be able to scale it up. And the response which we are getting in YCMAP is very, very positive. So this next project, so we talked briefly about the CMAP project with adults, which can be scaled up. We talked about youth suicide prevention project. This is third one. So there are 3 interventions. In one, we are working directly with school children. The second one is about training the teachers. And the third one is about training the GPs. So it's about whole continuum of care, and the GP, if he or she considers as appropriate, would make a referral to the secondary care psychiatric services. Next, please. So this is one of my colleagues, Professor Chris Williams. He's got this 5 areas company. And what he does is one of his projects, which I'm very impressed with, is called Living Life to the Full. And there are a number of those interventions we have culturally adapted and we have translated into different languages. These are very pictorial, very simple language. That is why his website gets millions of hits. And I would encourage all of you to have a look at it. Just Google into Living Life to the Full. You would be able to come across. So this is something which we have started to use. One of the other things we need to think about, the problem is so huge that everybody may not be able to get 8 sessions. What we may be able to do is maybe a 2 hours workshop for each class, each section, to be able to deliver that about life skills training. And these are some of the things which we can use. There's a CBT model, but we are also working about interpersonal therapy model as well, how we can scale it up, use it with the young population more widely. And these are all available online. Next, please. So these are the Urdu translations of exactly the same what you had seen earlier. Next, please. One of the other things is about prevention. How do you work through is going a bit earlier before people start to have suicidal ideation, self-harm, and suicide. As early as possible, we can go. We can also consider eyes and ears of the community are young people. So they can also work with us on increasing awareness within the wider community. And in that way, social media sensibly used can be quite helpful. Next, please. These are some of the awareness activities we have done with PIL. One of the other things which I try and promote, and sometimes I struggle with my colleagues at PIL as well, they're very hesitant to work in the local languages. I think it's hugely important that we are able to use the right terms and to be able to do. And if we are taught, trained, everything in English language, sometimes it can be struggle giving our messages in Urdu language, in Pashto, in Sindhi, in Balochi. So it's important that we, within the academic centers, we try and promote our own languages as well. I think that is likely to have a much bigger public health impact than writing and promoting in English language. Acha, 1 minute. Let's go to the next slide, please. So here we have got this opportunity of Digital Pakistan. Government is taking great strides, so that's wonderful. Next one, please. We are, among top 5 in freelance market globally. So we are not only talking about Pakistan, it's huge, so it's wonderful. And we have got 300,000 English-speaking IT professionals. A great resource. We need to look at how do we pull them into mental health. Next, please. This shows around the picture on my left is from Rawalpindi. If you could see 2 people on the street on their, they're probably disabled people. They still have mobile phone in their hands. It talks about some of the projects which we are doing. One is living life to the full as well, some in psychosis also. Next slide, please. I think this is my last slide. We've been working with an organization called OMAN. This is, helpline, I think available 24 hours. They have probably got 250 people offering counseling and therapy. We have trained a significant number of people in suicide prevention. One of the important things, and I think Professor Nashi also talks about, is people competence about being able to offer these complex interventions. I think that is something we need to focus on. We would need all the people who are out there who have done their master's level psychology, how we can utilize this wonderful resource, for how we can also put in regulations, yes, but also the support systems around supervision. There are some other helplines as well. We can look at how best to work with them. Next slide, please. So these are my all the acknowledgements. Maybe some of the people are missing there. We could not have been able to do these very large projects without the help of our colleagues. There are funders as well who have funded the projects. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Professor Dr. Mr. Hussain. That was a very informative and enlightening session, and especially the practical aspects of taking care of the mental health in community. So thank you. So our next speaker, I would like to request Professor Dr. Ayan Hassan, Director, Clinical Psychology Institute, Shifa International University, and ex-Vice Chancellor Allama Iqbal Open University, with Dr. Hassan's decades of experience in the field and research and dynamic knowledge and training a lot of personnel, and still continuing expert in her field. We would like to hear her views on the future of university education in the COVID-19 world. So, Dr. Hassan, the forum is yours to speak.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes, we can.
Okay. I was going to go a little bit away from the, just the routine thing about coronavirus, because I hit a research project which is being done by a team of Fulbrighters, and these Fulbrighters are uncovering ancient coronavirus epidemic over 20,000 years ago. Their hypothesis is that the human race must have come across many epidemics, and they must have some resistance to it. And the history of their ordeal must be written down in their genes. Generally, the genetic material is known as genomes, and each of which provides a partial record of evolutionary history of our species. In the past few decades, geneticists have learned how to decode the extensive information captured within our genomes, uncovering these details on the historical peopling of the planet and how modern human diversity has shaped in response to the challenges posed by new environment and living conditions. I got interested in the genomes because, having studied with Dr. Ajmal for some time, I learned about his Gestalt psychology and collective unconsciousness. I remember the Gestaltian feel that the human brain inherits thousands and thousands of years of history. And somewhere in our unconscious, we have the traces of how we have fought these problems, including depression, or committing suicide and all these. So, but psychology is not as scientific at present as the medical sciences are, or as the other hard sciences are. And so when I was interested in this, they did the study of about, the study is about history of genomics of 2000 years ago. The way they proceeded was they took 26 population samples from different countries, and these comprised of something like 2,600 people. And what we found was that many of these genomes have the traces of fighting the pandemics like us, and like we have at present, and they have some traces how the human beings have been facing these hostile environmental factors and how they have been able to overcome these. Then the second sample which they took was pandemic history of last 20 years, in which we at least have 3 pandemics which we have faced, and then they try to compare these. Now, viruses are very simple creatures, and all they need to do is make copies. When they make these copies, they cannot do it themselves, they cannot reprocreate. So what they were doing was they were trying to get into another human live gene. And the gene they selected was basically of lungs. And the interesting thing is that many of these pathogens potentially triggering new physiological and immunological adaptation, which help them to become surviving their threats. They have really attacked the lungs genes. And with this kind of thing, they have been able to do it. Now, how is this research interesting? Applying this cutting edge computational analysis to a set of over 2,500 human genomes from 26 worldwide populations, we recovered adaptive signature in 42 different human genes and coding vibes. Tellingly, these vibes signals were limited to 5 populations from East Asia, the likely ancestral homeland of coronavirus family, and suggested the ancestral and modern East Asian were initially exposed to coronavirus around 25,000 years ago. So the coronaviruses have that long life as 25,000 years. Further testing revealed that 42 VIPs are primarily expressed in the lungs, the tissue most affected by COVID-19 related pathogens. Now, and this confirmed that they interact directly with the mutation and symptoms, and several genes are either currently being used as drug targets or have been used in the past. So the research in which these history of genomics have been traced is helping the modern medicine to fight the pandemics, not at present, but also for future. The reason I thought of sharing this study was that I found it was interesting study in the sense that it is tracing the history of 2,000 years in human genes modification or imprinting a fight against the pandemics. I feel a similar kind of research of brain tissues might be helpful in fighting some of the mental diseases. Of course, it is for the coming generation and the younger people to think about the future research areas and identify some of the cutting edge technologies which enable these geneticists to do the research on genes, and by tracing the imprint on genes called genomics, they were able to identify that how 2,000 years ago these pandemics have affected the humans and how are they any different, or how they have adapted themselves. And they found a lot of similarities in the past and present. It made me think that perhaps many of our emotional problems, many of our mental diseases also need to be approached in that way. And perhaps we can identify how to treat them. This is sort of a, looks like a diwani ki bad lagti hai. It looks like it's a dream, but you know, dreams are always very precious. And they are the one which sort of force people to do new discoveries. So I'm just going to close here and leave the question to all the young psychologists that let us start looking at the mental problems and the emotional issues, not from the medicinal point of view, not that much of psychotherapy, but more of a, more deeper analysis of our subconscious and unconscious, and see how our human approaches to these mental issues and the emotional problems have been faced in the past, and how can we find a clue to solve it at present. I've taken only 5 minutes, but I just want to stop here and leave the platform for the next more tangible kind of issues. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Hassan. It was a great pleasure hearing from you, as always, and legends like you. I would like to introduce and just share in that Ms. Sabat Khan, our COE, has joined in, and she will give her a brief welcome address. She is a dynamic personality who is leading the whole show and giving the psychologist a free hand, and the educationalist and the other professionals a free hand for these webinars and these discussions and innovations, and how we can continue the professional and academic education in the COVID-19 world. Here for Ms. Sabat Khan.
जी आवाज आ रही है मेरी?
बिल्कुल आ रही।
I would like, first of all, my apologies for not being able to connect earlier. But I would like to take great pleasure in inviting and welcoming you all on this platform, which Dr. Nashi has very graciously organized. Here at Rashidi Medical Complex, we take great pride in taking innovative steps in our field of education and health. We are basically interest is around health, and mental health plays a very vital role in keeping our bodies healthy, as you all well know. The world is changing. That's one sentence that I first heard my grandmother say when I was a little. Dunya badal rahi. She would usually say that sentence when she was absolutely frustrated by our mischiefs and disappointed in our parents for not reprimanding us the way she thought was appropriate. She was venting her frustration on the changes in human interaction. The same sentence was I heard repeated by my parents, that generation, but they were complaining about how fast the interaction and the information dissemination has become. And since my children have grown up, I have been repeatedly saying the world is changing and changing rapidly. But now, today, after 1.5 years, 2 years of COVID, I think every generation is repeating this word. The world has changed. It's not changing. It has already changed. And so with it has its requirements, its challenges for the human interaction and human communication. And with that, human teaching and human learning has changed. And overnight, almost overnight, we have all been forced to adopt new ways, new formats, reinvent our workplaces to cope with all the requirements that has come with this COVID-19. And with that, I think academia has and needs to lead and suggest ways of what to learn from the experience of our past 1.5, 2 years, how to build on those learnings and take them forward and integrate those learnings in our future so that we are better prepared if anything like this happens again. And plus, how to cope with what has already changed and how our human interaction has become, because I don't think it's going to be the same as it was before. As we all know, the world has become a global village. The more narrow and closer we have become, the further the human touch has dissipated. जितना हम नजदीक आ गए उतना ही दूर चले गए. And with that comes all the psychological stress and challenges and whatnot. And I think psychologists today are in best place to advise us, help us in recreating our workplaces, our home places, our relationships with each other. And I do hope that we will learn something useful from this platform. And again, I thank you so much for sharing this space with us. Thank you and welcome to all.
Thank you, Ms. Sabahat, for giving us time, and it is indeed an honor to have you here with us. It gives me immense privilege to invite our next speaker, Professor Emeritus Dr. Najma Najam, ex-Vice Chancellor, Karakoram International University, Gilgit, and ex-Vice Chancellor, FJWU Rawalpindi. With a golden intellect, vast and dynamic experience in field academics and the highest level of administrative positions, she is still continuing a legacy in the field of psychology and education. So, Dr. Najma, please share your wisdom with us, and the forum is yours to speak.
Thank you very much. And I do appreciate the beautiful words that you have spoken for me. I'm a humble teacher and a humble learner, but I'm energized as always with what is happening, and I certainly COVID was an opportunity to look at ourselves a little closely. The topic, I'm not sure if I need to put my video on because my computer does not have the power to take me and the video and the sound, but I'll try. Okay, teaching and learning post-pandemic, change forever. And I feel that it is a paradigm shift. And we have gone through this paradigm shift and we're still going through it. So I would like to say that we as teachers and learners have understood things have changed. As Dr. Sabahat has already said, things have changed and things have changed so rapidly. It's like we're running after the tail and trying to make change. Let me say change forever. Yes, change forever. We started off with the chalk and the blackboard from school to college to universities, and it remained almost the same till about the 90s. Library consultation came in, research added at the higher education, and I speak for myself, from writing a 4-line page, 4-line copies to single lines to typewriters to computers, all in my lifetime. And from using typewriters, using computers, universities became familiar with computers around the 90s. And my teaching, I moved from the blackboard because of behavioral neuroscience. I started using overhead projectors to teach complex neuroanatomy And I didn't need to draw on the board. And the paradigm started changing then for me. And then emails and for communications and assignments, examinations came through immediately after that. And communication through WhatsApp is now, the last 2 years, very, very brisk. COVID revolution has hit us, the universities, in several ways. Let me count. I think it is the faculty that has changed, the teaching has changed, the universities have changed, the IT has changed, the students have changed, examinations have changed. So you look at it, it's a full-time revolution. And I was looking at, somebody sent me an email that Australian universities are looking for teachers. Posts were advertised part-time for online faculty for courses and teaching online, that the faculty could develop online courses and teach online courses, and there were several options given. And the higher education newsletters also speaks about that teaching has taken priority over research. Why? Because fieldwork has become a bit difficult, and so research has taken a back seat. And then even for administrators, working from home has become the new norm in the UK and the US. And the full lecture has taken different formats, hybrid, online, etc., which means internship is out of the window. We cannot send students to do practical training in the hospitals. And then teaching has become very in little sections. Just like we have this Facebook, we get or Yahoo, YouTube, we get these little pieces of information, and ideas and even each other are coming in ever shorter slices. The problems, on the other hand, facing us are increasingly more complex and demand more of our sustained attention to address them effectively. This is true for academia as well, not just human interaction outside the academia, within the academia as well. This webinar, for example, conferences, webinars are held, but there are missing deep interpersonal interactions. We, and this is a voice from all over the world, we would be doing our servants, our students, and our society a disservice if we cater completely to the shrinking attention spans in the classrooms, and gone are the days of the 3-hour classes. Can we still hold a 3-hour class, let alone an hour class in online? Nobody would be there. The teacher would be talking to an empty computer. YouTube videos and group discussions are, of course, used in the university classroom, and different sets of skills are needed to be learned and to be developed efficiently. So in the present day multi-layered society that we have, its multiple forms of communication, the possibilities are explored and are used. And let me go back to the topic of that I've given to this slide, that there are centrifugal forces that have brought a drastic change. And this centrifugal change is in the form of COVID. I mean, we were gradually moving in the IT era, but not forced to, like a rapid evolution of things happened. So what do? Katie Davis, who's a professor at the University of Washington Information School, says instead of narrowing our teaching to accommodate shorter spans, we should be expanding on our pedagogical repertoire to develop in students the full range of skills that they will need with many dimensions of the society, from the 100-character tweets to 700 pages of historical non-fiction papers. The COVID since the March 2020s has brought in a sudden sea quake or a sea tsunami which has shook the world and disrupted the academic activities in the past 1.5 years or 2 years almost. And this has accelerated a shift to a different global era. The era of the Zoom, the Google Meet, the hybrid learning, the online teaching and learning, and so on and so forth. And also, research took a standstill, especially where labs were involved. I was at Virtual University where they had, last year, where they had a collaboration with the University of Wuhan, where the whole thing started. And one of the faculty members was in Wuhan at that time. He said, when I went to my lab, there was nobody there. When I came out on the street, there was nobody there. In fact, we were not allowed to go anywhere. So which means the research essentially, which is not a day-to-day thing, or which is not like you 1 minute or 2 minutes late on a testing a particular sample, you cannot do that. So basically, research suffered. So science and researchers, where we were doing research for the sake of doing research, has changed also. We have now focused in the last 2 years, most research that has come out has been on the pandemic, from developing vaccines to distributing vaccines to information, misinformation, disinformation, from reversing the climate change effects, and so on, so forth. So the research is pushed for more applicability and issues of dealing with COVID than anything else. Similarly, Hamish quotes in the June 2021 newsletter, he said the university leadership has also changed. They have to change because of the realities, whether it is publications, students' admissions, examinations. It's a world over thing. UK and US are looking for students who are not coming from abroad. Productive researchers, efficient teachers. So policies and roles and institutions under the university leadership have to be drastically changed as well. No, it's not enough to be tech savvy and to learn new skills, but it has much more than just being able to, like me, learn how to use the Zoom or the Google Meet. The leadership, however, cannot work alone. It has to be an effective and a futuristic leader who runs the university. And effective leadership arrangements are required, including the formation of executive teams with balance and agility, and also good governance. Publications also, the priority of publications has changed. Is it the number? No, nobody cares about the number. They're more interested in what is this going to do to help the COVID situation. Whether it is social, environmental, health, physiological, etc., 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 like Dr. Hassan's research, that it is even genetics is being studied from the point of view of COVID. So, research emphasis has changed. We do not need the number, 200 publications, 400 publications, or n number of publications to be a professor. You have to make sure that your publications and the university's publications have an impact and are seriously applied in the real life situations. And is faculty important? Yes, faculty still important. But faculty projects are not just, as I said before, on publications, but also on the applications across the cultures and across the values which are changing because of COVID. Then I've seen universities in Lahore mushroom, but more than that, they grew in number, and grew in not just number, but the buildings. Absolutely amazing, the number of buildings that are coming up every day. And I agree with this point of view, that institutions will prosper when they're able to remain resilient and sustain contribution through these tough and uncertain moments. Nobody knows. The first wave, the second wave, the third wave, and now the fourth wave of COVID. Who knows? So institutional resilience is, of course, a much more diffuse target than the bibliometric output like publications. But it is more important for the institution to sustain itself. Huge buildings, huge auditoriums, huge libraries, large number of books. And to what end? It has shown us. For the last 2 years, these acreages of institutions are lying vacant. So perhaps COVID has taught us another lesson. Human resource, not brick and walls, matter. And then the teaching and learning, the decisions have to be made. First it was the lecture hall, Teacher goes in, gives a lecture, comes out, all satisfied, I've delivered. But now it has changed. Is it going to be a blended format? Is it going to be a hybrid format? Is it going to be a virtual format? Is it how the examinations are going to be conducted? Online? What about cheating? And so there are decisions that have to be taken, and of course that has also shaken the way that we teach. Lecturing has been reshaped by this pandemic, and it has enforced us on an adaptation that has prompted us to reflect on how strange lecturing is. Even, we have never gone out of that mold to think about it. Now we know that it was a redundant kind of a teaching, lecturing, and standing before 100, 200, 300 students and delivering, and then coming out satisfied that I have delivered. No. Then it was because we can do the same teaching online or through our presentations. Teaching and learning, of course, have also changed the access and flexibility of teaching and learning materials. But they need strong IT and computer skills. And of course, in Pakistan, IT connectivity and electricity. People using PowerPoint, people using images. Of course, it is effective. But why would an audience sit and look at it when they can just go and read it somewhere else? So, mechanical changes have been made, but more than that, we have seen changes in the teaching and the learning lifestyles. And now we have talked about the administration, we've talked about the building, we have talked about the teaching material. Now what about the administrators? In the administrators, we see that also the administrative staff wants off, and they can say that, yeah, there are flexible and sustainable ways of working. We don't have to be here in our offices 9 to 5 every day. So, we have certainly given everybody some material to think about. The future. Are campuses really safe? Multiple COVID variants are coming in spite of vaccination, and they are more lethal. Are the masks new normal? What about the courses that require practicums, hospitals, and internship training? What about the research in the labs, in the field? Are they safe? I don't think so. So we have to rethink not just courses and teaching, but also the strict regulatory accreditation bodies. There must be flexibility within the system. The system had become too rigid. So we have to I know I'm running short of time, but I would like to just take my last slide. We are now in a what I want, that was a nice slide I had somewhere. Let me see. Well, I guess not. But I wanted to say that COVID has created a centrifugal evolution that was needed, and technology has embraced it. And universities are left with empty halls, empty offices, while classes and teaching thrives online. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your attention. Certainly, COVID has changed, and the evolution has happened, and we have just to learn what to do with our huge buildings that are lying vacant. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Najam. It was a very enlightening talk and informative words, especially on the aspects and prospects of the educational system during the COVID-19. So thank you for that. And it gives me immense honor to invite our next speaker, Professor Dr. Talit Pasha, Vice Chancellor, Education University, Lahore, ex-Vice Chancellor, UAS, Lahore. Dr. Pasha has been a very dynamic Vice Chancellor with years into education, having in-depth wisdom on promoting infrastructure that benefits the masses and offer trainings in very vast spectrum of fields. And it will be very enlightening to hear about and understand about learning in times of COVID-19 from Sir. So Sir, the forum is yours to speak.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Thank you very much, Ji. First of all, I will appreciate the organizer for bringing all the intellectuals, practitioners, and professionals on this wonderful event. I in fact missed earlier presentations, and I was lucky to attend Professor Najma's presentation, which has covered many things which I really wanted to discuss. But as a matter of fact, I will focusing on my topic, and my perspective is more towards what's going on with the students, how the learning is in this situation. And I represent the university, which is 9 campuses, and we have a campus in Dera Ghazi Khan, Johorabad, Vihadi, Multan, Attak, and Faisalabad and Lahore. And the first thing we faced was, I'm not talking about, we spent about 1.5 months and to to train our teachers and how they have to deliver, and how which software and whatever, that is a story, and everybody has to face that. But the major issue I felt was from the student side, and that was the connectivity issue. I have students from GB, I have students from FOTA, I have students from many backward areas, and the students, they don't have the gadgets, they don't have the laptops. In my university, we have students which are lower middle class students. We have one good thing, that our fee structure is very low, and we attract a lot of students who are talented, who are there in the backward areas, who cannot afford expensive universities and education. And we also encourage students, we have hostels, and especially the students from far-flung areas, that they should come and stay there in the hostels, and living in the hostels. For instance, if we have students coming from FATA, from GB, and staying in Lahore, and staying in Lahore is already a learning, and it's already education. It's already you learn, you build up your confidence, you learn a lot, and especially when you have diversity in a hostel where you have students from different background, different regions of the country, that add a lot of value to the students in their dealing, in their behavior, in their learning, and learning about different culture, learning about different areas. I still remember I had my DVM from veterinary college, and at that time, and still they have the student from all areas of Pakistan. And we learned a lot, and now we have the relationship with our students, with our class fellows, and we go to their marriages and they come to us, and that is another thing which is very important part of learning, which is unfortunately affected very badly in this situation. So in the cities based students which are background from cities, they have the access to internet, they have the access to gadgets and these things. And then even our faculty, initially we had to offer them facilities to buy the laptop. Everybody don't have the laptops. So while the student is sitting in a classroom, there's a lot of motivation, there's a lot of learning from each other, and there's a lot of influence of the teacher, and they can communicate well, and they can come to the students, come to their director student affairs. And the most important thing which missed during this system is the sports. I mean, all as Professor Najma mentioned, that all those gymnasiums and all those sports complex and grounds and everything was vacant. And while you are in the sports, while you are in competition, you learned a lot. These things are very important for your personality development, for your sportsmanship and learning, and then confidence building and team building and all these issues. And my university have in all different disciplines of education in science and technology, in languages, in education. But in all our disciplines, we have other courses, 4 courses that is for how to be a good teacher. Even if you are doing botany, zoology, IT, English, Urdu, beside core education courses. And this teaching practice courses and teaching practice is part of their training. They do training, internship, which is mandatory for teaching practice. But these things were not available. The schools were off and the training. So I'm afraid that how long this disease situation will continue. As all of you know, another variant is there, and the cases are rising, and I don't know how far this system or how far these universities will be. We can keep the universities open. So all these situations, all these circumstances impacted badly on the learning. For instance, 2 years back, we established about 42 new labs, science labs. But those science labs are there, but It's not, we can hardly use there. We established computer labs, news libraries, and new infrastructures are there, but there's no access of the students, and this is very much disturbing and depressing that our new graduates are lacking these things. We were able to find out softwares and mechanism of doing practicals online from where they can do the chemistry, physics practical, but it was all software basis, online basis. And practically, if you do the things in the lab, you develop a lot of confidence. And there, the learning is altogether different as compared with the things you are doing online, and online in a situation where you have a connectivity issue, where you have a gadgets issue, where you have in the classroom, you learn from each other, you communicate, you learn many things. But in this situation, there has been a lot of challenge, and as Professor Najma covered about the examination system. Last semester, we had 3 months of off-campus online teaching, and 1 month we had the opportunity that students were on the campus, and exams will be face-to-face, and they don't like that because they were preferring online exams from their home. And because of the this phenomena of cheating and other things, they don't realize what is good for them. Then we were hardly able to negotiate with them and make them realize that these exams are very important for those who have studied hard, and there should be a difference that who worked hard, and then we were able to have their online exam, but on campus exam. And it was very hard for us to make them agree that, okay, we will have online exam, but it will be on campus exam. And last semester, we were able to have some of their practicals conducted, but I strongly feel there's a lot of compromise on the quality. There's a lot of compromise on the learning, and especially the internship program and the research culture is altogether suffering, especially for the
Professor Talit, sorry to interrupt you, but we are running short of time. So request you to, if you can wind up.
Sure.
Thank you.
Yeah, my bottom line is that it's not only the education, it's the learners, it's the students who will be the on disadvantaged side, and we are doing all our efforts to work in an environment where we can deliver online in a better situation, but unfortunately, the things are not in the favor of our learners. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Pasha, for this enlightening address regarding the challenges that students and the administration faces and how can we overcome those challenges. So thank you. And it is again a privilege for me to invite our next speaker, Professor Dr. Ruxana Kausar Vice Chancellor, Government College, Women University, Sialkot, Ex-Director, Institute of Applied Psychology and Center for Clinical Psychology, Punjab University. With her decades in educational field trainings, research, versatile teaching methods, and higher level leadership at various institutes, it is enlightening to hear about the use of technology in teaching and learning in the wake of COVID-19. What are the challenges and the opportunities that arise? And Dr. Kausar, the forum is yours to speak.
Thank you very much, Zaima. I was wondering if you can share the screen with me. Is it possible because I sent through my presentation? Or maybe.
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. First of all, I would like to thank all the worthy members, my colleagues, and be proud to be part of this such a magnificent bunch of colleagues nationally and internationally. I think I have to consider time because apne mashallah sab seniors jo hai unko काफी time diya. I am also among seniors, but they have covered most of it. So I'll just quickly move on to what we had experienced during last 1.5 years, rather 2 years during COVID. And I vividly remember that it was in March, I think 13th or 14th March, and there was this higher education commission team visiting us, conducting interviews of students for SAS scholarship. And we heard that there is a lockdown going to be tomorrow, and we had to cover about 100 more students. And Noor Amna, who is at the panel, she was sitting next to me, and Chairman of Higher Education Commission called for a meeting. And we were really in a chaos what to do. So this is where we begin. We conducted our interviews disregarding the first day of lockdown because we thought that the needy students who have been called for interviews should be over with. We did that, but eventually, can I have the next slide, Zaima? Can I have the next slide, please? Because I don't have control.
Dr. Kausar, is this the slide that you want?
Can you have the next slide, please? This is the cover slide.
Yeah. I am changing the next slides.
No. I think you have changed so many now.
Yes.
Okay. So I have already told you that our COVID started and we were in a chaos, and there was HEC's meeting and they were talking about, and everybody, including another vice chancellor from Sialkot, we joined in and panic at HEC side, of course, side 2, what to do. So we know that we are a developing country, though we are very much user of internet, but coming properly to use technology was a huge challenge. So we don't have proper internet accessibility, it seems so, but so many times still, I'm sitting in my office, which is situated in premises of jail, because we were given land from there. I don't have signals. Most of my students who live in border area, they don't have any internet connectivity. So there was a huge challenge what to do. It's easier to say, but when to practice, there was a huge challenge that how to move online. And there are so many challenges which we faced and still we are facing. And all my colleagues have highlighted those. Dr. Najma very comprehensively, Dr. Pasha has talked about students' perspective, but I would specifically confine myself to the internet and connectivity and all those technological uses. How did we manage them, and what are the challenges still ahead? So the developed countries have e-learning solutions providers, but in Pakistan, like 6 months or 7 months, HEC kept on saying that we are negotiating with the service providers, even more for mobile phone users, so that they can come up with packages which are conventional and which are heavy enough so that they can get signals while they are sitting at their homes. And tell you the truth, whenever we used to have meetings, so many times we had interviews of the students for scholarships, they were sitting on the top roof, and somebody was sitting under the tree. So our university, for example, University of Education, Dr. Pasha has talked about, you have two vice chancellors from a public sector university where the students are coming from a very humble background and who may not be able to afford even the packages of internet. Then government policies for developing localized education technology had not been focused earlier, and only virtual university, and I can say maybe Allama Iqbal Open University. So we had actually segregated two types of learning. The universities, HEC has a different policy for face-to-face teaching and also for virtual learning, of course, for virtual university. Students' personal resources, as I already said. So we were. It was very difficult for us to arrange from some money for the students who are unable to afford even to top up their mobile phones, and the students who didn't have phones, so they had to borrow from their brothers or fathers or relatives so that, or they can actually attend the lectures. Next slide, please. Coronavirus spread in March. Education department and university found themselves completely unprepared and to move online. Most of them, of course, I'm not talking about all of those. Maybe private universities or the other universities are much better, professional degree awarding universities, but generally speaking, most of the universities had these issues. And this is why I'm saying it, because we had been attending a series of meetings from higher education platform, and the vice chancellor had been sharing their concerns on those platforms. Educational institutions have faced closure due to terrorist attacks and political unrest. We have seen that this is for the first time the universities continued functioning despite this disruption. Earlier, when it used to happen, kabhi terrorist attacks hote the university band ho jati thi, political unrest. Had we had thought of this solution, we didn't have to close the universities. Also, university had segregated face-to-face teaching and learning. As Dr. Najma said, that we have to be flexible in our policies. Maybe we have to think of having some mixture of offering some courses online so that universities, God forbid, the situation continues, or maybe if it's over, some next situation arises, so we should be able to handle with this situation. So we should continue having this facility and try to move on. And finally, we have to actually build upon on using technology and our resources. Next, please. Now, worldwide, we have seen that the technology has been rapidly not only advanced, but use has been increased, not only with common users, but also in educational institutions. People had smartphones, tablets, computer system, laptops. Yes, we had it, but we not every student had laptop. I earlier told you that even students didn't have smartphone. So most of them had to borrow from here and there or arrange for those. So numerous social media network sites we are very familiar with, and now we have become even more familiar. High-speed internet connectivity like 4Gs and 5Gs connectivity is available in other countries, but in Pakistan, still we are lagging behind. Advanced artificial intelligence-based learning management systems available everywhere, not in Pakistan. We had been struggling. For example, our university had LMS, learning management system, but considering it's a new university, we were unable to have examination system in place. And when we had a segregated one, we found out lots of issues with it. So we are still piloting it. Online learning courses such as Coursera, Udemy, Lynda, edX, MOOCs, these are available all over the world. And now with HEC's cooperation, Coursera is offering courses free of cost to the institutions. So hopefully we will continue. And they have earned huge amount of money. And they'll continue earning, maybe anticipated that they are going to move on to these courses. And we may think and learn from this. Next, please. Now, the challenges which we faced are internet accessibility in remote areas. We had to open the hostels for students, and tell you the truth, we couldn't open the hostels straight away because our hostels were taken as a quarantine centers. So we actually could not offer any help to those students. So what we did was sending them notes on WhatsApp. We had WhatsApp groups. We had email, attachments sent to the students. We were even sending them on their postal addresses, or we were trying to ask the universities or who can host them in nearby areas or the institutions. It was hard, very, very, very hard for students as well as for teachers. And converting straight away, of course, teachers were not used to either. So converting their teaching mode from face to face to online, preparing their lecture notes, putting them online on LMS, using LMS, it was a hard task. So lack of expertise, adoption and social acceptance of the so proud that the teachers came, staff, we have very few IT staff, but they worked day and night to help students generate their IDs, generate students' IDs, teachers' IDs, admin IDs, having a monitoring system, and then giving training to the students how to connect to LMS, and then to use this MS team, because we are officially using MS team, training teachers. So everything was going so day and night kind of a training, and everything was done that we were online within 2 weeks time. So that was very minimum time which one could take. So we did it. Then please move on. Next, please. सबसे बड़ा challenge जो डॉक्टर साहब ने भी बात किया, that was attitude and behavioral change, both positive and negative. Positive in a manner, people were facilitative. Our teams were our IT team was very, very facilitative. Our teachers were very cooperative. Our students were very willing. But eventually, out of the blue, there was this was anger, resentment, all these negativity, pessimism, when it came to examination system. So teachers were feeling very taxed. For example, we had a higher education department faculty members who never touched the computer. So they were feeling it was very daunting to use technology to give lectures. So we had to provide them assistants who could actually help them. They used to come to the university. We had provided them systems, but they were there sitting and just delivering lectures. And then their agitated behavior, anxiety, feeling of uncertainty. Of course, this was an unpredictable situation. Still it is. And how to cope with it. Teachers, students had become used to, I don't know what kind of routine I should say, but when it came to examination, they were agitating and it became a mob behavior. So everyone was, even I was receiving n number of emails which choked my personal email as well as my official email, and they were with the name of boys. And I had to respond to them, look, you are now my student, please ask my student to write me, and so she can write to me. I am her vice chancellor. But all the boys were writing these emails. So it was a mob behavior who was actually monitoring them from distance. Then there is also what we have experienced ourselves, screen and virtual fatigue. For instance, right now we are sitting in different time zones. Similarly, we have meetings on how for somebody it's night and somebody is early morning, but you have to attend them and you have to participate in them. Similarly, so many people who are not used to screen, they also feel fatigued and feel unhappy about it. Next, please. Having said all these challenges, this has also provided us opportunities. As Dr. Najma was saying, that we were not using technology, and we were not, of course, still I find it difficult. But then everybody was onto it. We know how to use Google Meet, how to use Zoom, how to upload our lectures, how to carry out assessments. So provision and use of smart gadgets like smartphones, tablets, internet, everything was like had become the necessity, and we had no choice but to do that. And had we had time, there wouldn't be a right time. So COVID has, in disguise, has provided us this opportunity to equip ourselves with all these expertise which is required for teaching and learning online. Then development of e-learning platforms. LMS, for instance, our university was in very preliminary stages, but our team worked very hard to make it more functional within 2 weeks' time. Use of e-learning platforms. Now, every now and then, I keep on receiving list of courses, and teachers get registered to those, whoever find it interesting. So all these platforms are helping us to have international kind of teaching and learning experience, enhance teachers and administration's digital skill sets, which they were afraid of, or they had phobia or fear. They have been able to overcome because it's kind of a flooding technique which we have used with them. Then enhanced students' learning technique skills too. Students were much better in a way because they were already used to using social media and all these platforms. So they didn't find it difficult. However, what they found it difficult coming back to campus and sitting in exams in face-to-face situations. Then virtual based interactive learning was difficult for us, but we had to, I must admit that we had to put in a mechanism through QEC, which was monitoring classes, because student had a platform to complain that whether the class is happening or not. Then we had to put up some observers along with the teachers, so who could randomly check in whether the classes are happening on time or not. Next, please. Hybrid mode of teaching and learning has become now neat, and AGC is thinking about it, that as it's going to continue, so they are making some policy about online teaching and learning. It has become easier to reach out and engage international academicians, researchers, and other professionals. For instance, it used to be very hectic to bring international speakers at the platform of Pakistani universities. It has become so easier. You are on Facebook and you ask somebody and they will be willing to do that. So we started international speaker series, including speakers from UK, USA, Indonesia, Malaysia. So they're very willing to actually come on the platforms and give their talks or trainings. Establishment of, I must acknowledge here, AGC's initiative of establishing psychosocial centers, which are considering conducting series. And from that platform, we have established one. So from that platform, we have conducted a series of workshops engaging national and international experts in the field. And I would appreciate my colleagues here to spare some time to deliver their maybe talk or lecture or a workshop, small workshop, for either students or teachers to share their stresses and worries. So I will be very happy to invite you. Then funding provided by AGC for upgrading required infrastructure in the universities. They also provided some money for Coursera, where students can get registered, teachers can get registered. They also provided money for psychosocial centers. And also there was some amount for students who are unable to afford connectivity or internet facility. Then of course, सबसे बड़ी opportunity which I find is social support network. So it has become very easier to hold meetings. It has become very easier to share ideas, and that's very, very important, and that's been very important to relieve stress across the board. Next, please. I would just conclude that COVID-19 has posed lots of challenges, but it has also, because it was, of course, uncertain and unpredictable situation. Universities were required to abruptly shift. University have been able to do that. At the same time, it has offered numerous opportunities, skillfully utilize technology for teaching and learning, conducting meetings, workshops, webinar, conferences. So many international conferences are being held without any expenses. So it has saved lots of finances too. It has connected academicians, students with international community. Hybrid mode of teaching and learning has to continue, and it has become a reality. And here I would like to say that stress, anxiety, and every psychological impact, which I have heard the first speaker speaking, it is really there. and we offered tele-psychological services for community as well as students. People were hesitant, of course, because this is a small town and people don't know what is use of it. But here comes the awareness among public. So it is very, very important that we move on towards prevention. We move on using more technology, but as Dr. Talit Pasha said, that face-to-face interaction is also important. Students, community, building community, and also using these Directorate of Student Affairs, which arranges so many extracurricular activities. They are gone dormant. So I'm sure they had been using these platforms, but it's not like having actual face-to-face activities. So I hope and pray that the situation gets better, and you all of you stay well. Thank you very much for providing me this opportunity. I wish to thank Dr. Nashi and everybody sitting there, Zaima and Aisha, and all the organizers sitting from your platform. Thank you very much for providing this opportunity.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Professor Kosa. It was really wonderful to hear from you after some time. And I'm pleased to share that I have been the part of that prestigious department where you remained director for years. Many thanks for accepting our invitation for this event. Assalamu alaikum all. My name is Aisha Abdul Malik. I am working as a research associate and a health psychologist at Pakistan Institute of Living and Learning, and I welcome you on behalf of RLMC and PIL for this event. So continuing our event towards the taking toward the next step, I would like to invite some other facilitators as we have listened the brilliant talks on this very important issue and a very important topic. So the next speaker is very renowned in the field of hypnotherapy. I guess almost every student of Punjab, even I would say that every person of Pakistan in the field of psychology would know him for his outstanding contribution in the field of hypnotherapy, none other than Mr. Max Babri. He is Director, Healing Center, and certified hypnotherapist and a clinical psychologist. Welcome, Mr. Babri. The stage is yours.
Thank you very much, Aisha. I hope everybody could hear me. I am currently in Sweden, and I understand and I know that the topic is actually effect of COVID-19 on university education system. And despite that, I had actually suggested a very unusual topic, and the topic is a meaning and purpose in life, and that will surprise people, but that's what I wanted to do. But before I get on with my 10-minute talk, I want to thank the Rashid Latif Medical Complex Counseling and Wellness Center, and also your institute, Pakistan Institute of Living and Learning. And thank you very much. And also before you, Zaima also did a great job of moderation and facilitation. So I think but getting that out of the way, I could really then get on with what I want to say. I think I would like to ask a question generally to everybody to make it a little more interactive and wake up everybody whose name I can see, but many of us maybe are doing something else. But in any case, I just want to, the question is, really the question is, and it is a rhetorical question, because a rhetorical question means that questions don't really have an answer, but it allows us to ponder and think for a while. So my question is, why are we here? So definitely, if you like, I mean, I always do interactive things. You're most welcome to switch on your microphones and have a little chat and give a suggestion. And of course, Aisha is a great moderator, and if everybody is talking at the same time, I'm sure Aisha will interrupt them. But let me have 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 ideas about why are we here. And if you guys want to put it in the chat box, that's fine also. I'll open the chat box.
Okay, we are here, Max, it's Ruxana. We are here to share our experience of last 1.5 years and see how to move on and how to improve on those.
Absolutely. And Ruxana, by the way, great presentation on connectivity and student situation. And once again, congratulations on being the Vice Chancellor at Sialkot. We haven't been able to meet to that. But anyways, great answer. Anybody else who wants to venture for an answer to this? Saima from Singapore may want to say something, but Saima, first you have to switch on your microphone.
Assalamu alaikum, sir. Assalamu alaikum, everyone.
Walaikum assalam.
I know why I'm here. I am here to understand what's going on back home. I am here to understand what is my purpose in this and what is it that I can contribute. And it's absolutely wonderful hearing कि इतनी challenging environment में our seniors, Dr. Najma, Dr. Roxana, how people have stepped up. It's incredible. And people are complaining in first world Singapore. It's so difficult. And here you guys are real life heroes. So I'm here to learn.
Yeah,
thank you for putting me in the spot.
Well, why not? Why not? Why not? I mean, that's what one does with friends. And I see Dr. Usman Hutiana. That's what Dr. Usman Hutiana is here. So I'll urge him to switch on his microphone, and instead of us chatting on the chat box, we could do it directly. Dr. Hutiana, why are we here?
Assalamualaikum, sir. Sir, I think it's just a biological occurrence. We are here not by our choice, and probably our parents were having some good fun, and we just kind of came with plan or no plan. But since the consciousness is here, and we just wake up, and once we are out of the society's shackle, we try to make a meaning out of it, because we have to put some story, that kind of thing.
Absolutely, absolutely. Anybody else who wants to venture? Thank you very much, Dr. Usman Hutiana. Anybody else who wants to venture and explain why we are here? But the thing is, whatever you guys say is absolutely correct. There is no right or wrong answer, so to say. There's certainly no wrong answer. Every answer is the right answer. And it becomes absolutely correct answer if we also add the word I think before we answer, because then absolutely it is unconditionally accepted and correct answer. And anybody else? And then I will want to give you my point of view on what I think. Okay, I guess there is no more question coming. There's something in the chat. Let me look in the chat. Aisha, आप chat देख रही हैं ना साथ साथ? अगर chat में कोई नजर आता है आपको तो आप मुझे वो कर दीजिएगा. So मैं chat नहीं देखता because I got distracted. So you are the moderator, so you do that. Okay, I think the question was really rhetorical, and this Usman Hutiana and Saima and Dr. Kosa was absolutely spot on. But I would also like to say I was really asking why are we here in this world? So we create a little larger, a little more open-ended question to our existence and our being. And I know the topic still remains COVID-19 and the university education system. And I also know that I have used maybe already half of my time, but I will quickly go and explain what I think. And since I've used the word I think, I am sure that I can't be challenged. I can be challenged, but I can't be said wrong because I'm entitled to my thinking. And this is what I want to communicate to everybody, that sometimes the world that we look at, we begin to think that we define the world. No, it is the world we look at. And if we say at the world that this is how I look at the world, many of our problems will actually go away and many of our disagreements will go away. And I think we are in this world, in my personal opinion, in the short time that I have, is to be a source of happiness and joy for fellow human beings. And also look at who else is a stakeholder in the life that I live. I'm born one day, and I will go away another day, and it might be 50 or 60 or 70 or 80 or whatever number of days as we grow older, because I'm going to be 70 soon. So as we grow older, we tend to think that maybe the life is longer and longer and longer, but that's okay to think like that. But nevertheless, in the scheme of things, whatever life we have is actually very infinitely, means very small and very little significance. Yes, it is of very little significance, but what we do, the way we behave, the way we interact with people is of tremendous significance. And I'm also reminded, I've also luckily one of those people who have learned from Dr. Ajmal, and Dr. Iftikhar and Hassan mentioned Dr. Ajmal and also mentioned Gestalt and also mentioned sensitivity training and also mentioned collective consciousness of Jung. And of course, these are some of the things which has also influenced me. So we actually live beyond ourselves. And when we are talking about stakeholders, I was also talking about the birds. I was also talking about the nature. I was also talking about fellow human beings. I was also talking about the Mother Earth. I was also talking about the environment we live in. And I was also talking about the interaction that we have with each other. And I think many people think that COVID brought a lot of challenges, but I think it also brought us to understand the purpose and meaning of life is something bigger than just trying to get a great job and make a lot of money and be the agents of all the businesses that exist around us. All the universities was created and all the, and now we're talking about the education system, all the universities was created, unfortunately, in a tacit way, not to make people educated, but help them find great jobs and improve their earnings. So it was very, very materialistically thought. And of course, the universities were then graded. You know, if you do an MBA from XY, I don't want to take any names. If XYZ university, your starting salary would be 70,000. If you do a MBA from a ABC university, your starting salary could be 90,000 rupees की बात हो रही है. I am currently in Sweden, by the way. तो अगर हम बात कर रहे हैं कि जी, if you go and study abroad, you come back and you get a banking job, maybe you can get 110,000, and so on and so forth. So education was monetized and said, this is what you could get. We never asked that education is being provided so that we are able to have knowledge and wisdom and experience and give something to people. So education became something that is supposed to take something from people. And unfortunately, that purpose of education was very defeatist. And now we have begun to recognize that yes, education has to be much more than just providing, making people able to make a lot of money. But what about the stakeholders? What about the most important people in my life? I challenge everybody and ask everybody and urge everybody to think that who are the 5 most important persons in your life? And then I'll just take 2 or 3 more minutes. I know my time is up soon. And Aisha, just warn me, don't be intimidated by an old man. Just tell me, time management is the most important management in the world. And if we can't manage time, then we have not managed anything. And time belongs to people. And nobody has the right. It doesn't matter how big of a professor, how interesting the talk is, to capitalize on somebody else's time. So please stop me when I am done, and I'm authorizing this to you. So I was quickly going to say, when we think of these 5 people, if we have thought about these 5 people in our mind, I can tell you that none of these 5 people that you have thought were most important in your life are anybody else than close family members. And if there are close family members and they are the most important people in our life, then the purpose of life must be to make these people happy, to make these people joyous. And these are the people who unfortunately are at the receiving end of all our frustrations, all our anger, all our disappointment, all our negativity, and we offload it onto them. So how can we be successful? So success for me then is, I wanted to define success also. Success for me is also that if people who are important for me, especially बच्चे और spouse की बात कर रहे हैं, पेरेंट्स की भी बात करें, वो भी बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट है नेचुरली फॉर ऑल ऑफ अस, बट स्पाउस बच्चों की बात कर रहे हैं, तो अगर मेरे स्पाउस और मेरे बच्चे मेरी रिस्पेक्ट नहीं करते और अंदर से डरते हैं मुझसे, बहुत ज्यादा खौफजदा हैं, तो आई हैव लॉस्ट इट, बिकॉज द मोस्ट इंपॉर्टेंट पीपल डोंट रिस्पेक्ट मी. Because and respect is not because मेरे बाल सफेद हो गए हैं या मेरे 4 PhDs हैं और मैं हॉट शॉट साइकोथेरेपिस्ट हूँ और मैंने इतने साल क्लिनिकल साइकोलॉजी पढ़ाई है. नो, द रिस्पेक्ट comes from how I treat them. If I respect them, respect is something that we earn. So we must go and earn respect, not only of the closest people, but also respect of every stakeholder that's important in my life. Aisha, do I still have time? Can I move?
Sir, you can take the one last minute.
Okay, I take one more. So that's the success part. I want all of us to be successful, and we'll be successful if my wife, my child, my most important person in my life, whoever that person is, able to say, मकबूल बाबरी साहब, आप बाहर जा रहे हैं, अपनी बनियान तो बदल लें, आपके जिस्म में से पसीने की बदबू आ रही है. और अगर वो नहीं कह सकते ये और डरते हैं और खौफजदा हैं, तो मैंने कोई रिस्पेक्ट नहीं अर्न की, मुझसे वो खौफजदा है. फिर जब प्यार होता है, मोहब्बत होती है, रिस्पेक्ट होती है, तो वी कैन से एनीथिंग टू एनीवन. And most important learning that we get, whether it's university or at home, is the candid feedback that close people could give to us, and as a result of that, we become better human beings. 30 seconds or अब एक तो ये बात थी, और हैप्पीनेस क्या है? हैप्पीनेस मेरे नजदीक ये है कि if my job, my profession, my source of income is connected to something that I love to do. So if my job and my profession is my hobby and my passion, and it also brings livelihood and it also improves the quality of life of people, then I'm very, very successful. So purpose in life is to be happy and successful. Success comes by earning respect, and happiness comes by making your job a joy for yourself. Thank you very much. I hope, Aisha, I was in time.
Many thanks.
And if there are any questions, I'll be happy to take.
It's really very pleasure to listen to you. I wish we could have more time to listen to you, but I hope we will get more chance in future to hear from you. And thank you so much for highlighting the importance of the time. And I really would appreciate and request our worthy facilitators to keep a little note of that to remain in the time of the talk. So thank you so much, Mr. Bapri.
I think Saima has a question. Agar question aap ek allow kar deti.
Sure, sure.
Thank you, Max. I think I don't have a question. You've highlighted something really, really beautiful. And what I would like to add to your wisdom is that when we think of the 5 most important people, I would like each one of us to count ourselves. Because if we're not going to take care of ourselves, we cannot bring respect, joy, or happiness to people around us. So I would say make yourself first and count yourself among those 5 people, so you can be in a good mental space.
Absolutely, most remarkable contribution, Saima. And that is, as a therapist, that's what we tell to people who come to us, that you are the most important person in your own life.
Perfect. Thank you, sir.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Many thanks, Ms. Saima. That was really a very therapeutic contribution. Thank you. So moving towards our next speaker, I would highlight the importance of education system and the structure of any country's education system. We are delighted to share. We have one of the pillar of Higher Education Commission of Pakistan, Ms. Noor Amna Malik. Ms. Noor Amna Malik worked as a Director General Learning Innovation at Higher Education Commission in Pakistan, Islamabad for 10 years, and recently completed her tenure as a former advisor, monitoring and evaluation, Higher Education Commission. It's our pleasure to have you, Ms. Amna. Over to you.
Actually, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Assalamu alaikum ji. Sabse pehle, I'd like to thank Dr. Nashi and her brilliant team for giving me the opportunity. But at the same time, I was sending private messages to Dr. Roxana that I need to run away because most of the points that I wanted to say were very nicely, very aptly covered by all our esteemed speakers. But Dr. Max Babri gave me a small impetus to continue, that there was a glimmer of hope for me to survive in this seminar. So I'll start and only focus on the good points, because very ruthlessly, Dr. Roxana has actually talked about all the points. But I'd start with that meeting, which we both managed to attend in March 2020. Where it was announced. We both were in a meeting when I was given a call, and so was she, that the chairman HEC is calling up an emergent meeting. And that meeting actually changed the future course of Pakistan, let me tell you, because in that meeting, everything was discussed. All the 218 vice chancellors of public and private sector universities were invited to talk about a future strategy of addressing what to do. If we have to close the universities, what will happen to the academic year, the students, and everything related to the university future. But let me also tell you one thing, that today, whatever in 5-7 minutes I will talk about, I will try my level best to only focus on the positive outcomes. I remember when I would teach my students SWOT analysis, there is in SWOT, we talk about strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. So when we talk about threats, we say threats bring opportunities. So as Dr. Max talked about, so let us only talk about what opportunity did this COVID bring for us. I recall that day onwards, Higher Education Commission became educational NCOC. And it actually kind of adopted all the universities' problems, the private or the public. And whatever strategies, options, alternatives, shortcomings, limitations, challenges were discussed, everything was, in fact, mutually discussed. I remember it was a 3 to 4 hour long meeting. Dr. Pasha and Dr. Roxana Kausar can actually correct me on this. And it was a never-ending meeting. and a nightmare for HEC officials afterwards, because we were told not to even sleep for 1 minute, but to make sure that all the systems keep running. So I remember that university vice chancellors from private sector or public, they were helping each other. Dr. Oksana very aptly mentioned about one of our vice chancellors, Dr. Chishti from University of Sialkot, who said, I am willing to help or support those public universities which do not have a learning management system, or you put me in a committee of curriculum for e-learning. So these kind of rare unity, helping each other, support for each other, empathy for each other was seen, which I had never seen in my 25 years of experience. And I realized that suddenly we were talking about, as Dr. Oksana, I'm not going to repeat all that. She talked about the deep-rooted IT connectivity aspects and issues and challenges. All those things were very clearly talked about. They were tabled. And suddenly people started to pour in with the problems, and solutions also started to come equally with that. So I, at that time, never had this idea that I would be talking about that day. But let me tell you, that was the day our real future actually started. So I consider the future of higher education, at least in Pakistan, very bright, because we have understood 50% of the problem. So when there is an identification of the problem, then the solution is literally on its way. So I think now that we have 226 universities, the credit should be given to Higher Education Commission for taking the lead role, but then equal credit has to be given to the universities, their leaders, their teams, students, their parents, everybody. In spite of all the challenges, all the problems, we are still there. We have not wasted our academic year. And if you look at the developed world as compared to them, we have done equally well. I mean, we were much behind them, but we have done equally well. Not equally, I would say much better than them. I can completely agree with what Dr. Saiba and all our esteemed speakers talked about, the issues, especially examination. Students, in fact, exploited the situation also. There were unethical issues also. But at the same time, I realized that in spite of all the negativities, parochialism, political issues, mindset issues, we were still able to, stand tall. And I would give ourselves, all of us, 100 out of 100 that our academic years were not, whatever way we were shaky, we had issues, but we reached there. And we also need to understand the limitations that Higher Education Commission or all of us have, that in spite of all that, in the current budget, we still should have been given more money. But at the same time, what Higher Education Commission was trying to do and is still trying to do is to facilitate equally both the sides, the public and the private. We're also talking, as Dr. Saba mentioned, about reasonable collaborations with tech giants and with the companies, so that smartphones or smart tabs are given to students with those dongles which are able to give them internet connectivity, because there are many of them who do not have that kind of a facility. So all these things are happening. Now I would quickly come to a point, because there's actually virtually nothing for me to talk about. Let me just come to a point of what should we do ahead now. For us, it's very important to understand that now that we know what's going on, we should be able to come up more innovative. And Pakistanis are extremely intelligent people, very innovative people. And we also have indigenous solutions to come up with. So let us discuss those. Let us think about those. How can we make our infrastructure, our IT infrastructure better, or even more indigenized, and even more reasonably affordable. And similarly, I would say that we have not left any stone unturned in coping or coming at par with the international standards. I am in constant touch with many foreign universities, and I've realized that they have even worse problems. But if you compare them with a developing country like Pakistan, we should really clap and really give ourselves a big hand of applause. But at the same time, there are issues. Issues are that we now need to keep the same tempo, the rare unity, which I mentioned about. We need the same understanding to carry on. I would commend the vice chancellors, their teachers, the students, the managers, the university people I'm talking about. They coped well, but at the same time, communication strategy needs to be devised for the awareness of the stakeholders. Media played a very important role. earlier, and they have to again play a very important role in support of the education sector to also give awareness to the students that please do not exploit the situation by doing protests outside and halting situation, making it difficult for vice chancellors, because at the end it is the single one person is the vice chancellor who has to bear the consequences. So then again, provincial higher education commissions or departments and the central, they all have to remain in close coordination and harmony with each other without having any conflict. No parochialism should go on. And if Pakistan really needs things to go on in a better way for the public welfare, for the future of Pakistan, we really need to invest a lot on our teachers so that they're confidently learning the e-learning techniques and are also able to provide the same non-stop synchronous or asynchronous teaching to our students. And last but not the least, as Dr. Babri very aptly mentioned about it, that it is us who have to understand each other. We all have to behave like one family because we are one nation and we're working for each other, for ourselves, for our country. So I think the spirit should be the way we have shown, in spite of all the hiccups, in spite of all the problems that have been mentioned, which are so genuine, which cannot be denied, which are still persistent. But the way we have fared, I think the credit goes to us that we are one nation in the entire universe, which whenever any calamity has come, we have always stood united and we've done so great. So I think in spite of all the challenges that we have come across and we are going through, I think now that we know what the problems are, we are in total control of taking care of all of that. And with the help of all our government agencies and collectively together, I think we can do it. And I can just say one thing, that with all Allah's help, together we can, and together we will make our universities compete in the global community with the same quality like others, with the best of our abilities, and make Pakistan proud. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Samna. That was really very enlightening talk. And I think we all would agree that united we stand and divided we fall, and we have to face this situation and we have to go through with this and we have to succeed in this situation. So now I would like to move towards our next speaker, a very worthy one, just like the other speakers, Ms. Saima Salman. She's founder, CEO, Institute of Rational Living, Singapore. She's clinical fellow at Albert Ellis Institute and certified supervisor, cognitive behavioral therapy, rational emotive behavior therapy, USA. She's certified youth mental health first aider, Georgetown University, USA, and also certified therapeutic yogi for teens. Integral Yoga Institute, New York City, USA. I'm delighted to be her workshops and extended lectures, training, and I am delighted to hear from you, Ms. Saima, after a long time. So the floor is all yours.
Thank you so much, Aisha. Thank you so much, everyone, for being here. I feel really honored to be one of the speakers because 50 or 60% of the speakers on this panel have been my teachers, my mentors, my supervisors. So I feel truly honored and overwhelmed to be among one of them. So thank you so much.
The rest of the 40 would be your student, Ms. Saima.
No. No, there's all my seniors, most of them, but it's an honor that Dr. Najma, Dr. Ruxana, Max, Nashi, they've all taught me. So thank you so much for having me here. So my topic, as you all know, that I am big on mental health. In Singapore, I have been, for the last 10 years, also involved in a social enterprise where I've been working with kids, youth at risk. So वो बहुत एक मुश्किल क्लाइंट पॉपुलेशन है और मैं कोशिश करूंगी उर्दू में बात करने की क्योंकि आजकल मैं टॉक्स उर्दू में देने की कोशिश कर रही हूँ और बहुत खराब बोलती हूँ. So please bear with me if I'm gonna make an effort to talk in Urdu. So मेरा टॉपिक बेसिकली ये है कि अभी जो हालात हैं पाकिस्तान में मेंटल हेल्थ के और बेसिकली पूरी दुनिया में ही है, just पाकिस्तान में नहीं है. The one thing I think where we as clinical psychologists, I'm a clinical psychologist, we can make a difference is where हम students को ही नहीं बल्कि जो teachers हैं इस वक्त universities में, schools में, colleges में और जो parents involved हैं उन बच्चों के, that I hope to start a conversation about mental health with not only with the teachers, but students and parents involved as a trio. So I think the biggest challenge we have right now in Singapore, as I work with the education community in Singapore as well, is to how do we collaborate to become one team. और उसमें जो delivery की बात आती है कि हम कैसे help कर सकते हैं. The biggest challenge is that what I do personally is whoever I talk about my mental health challenges. So हमारे लिए just because जी मैं कोई बड़ी clinician हूँ और मैं 25-30 साल से ये कर रही हूँ, इसका ये मतलब नहीं है कि मुझे कोई anxiety नहीं हो रही है, मुझे कोई burnout नहीं हो रहा है, या मुझे कोई lack of motivation नहीं हो रही है. तो जब बात करनी हो, I think teachers को भी the most important thing is कि हम सब आगे आएं, teachers भी, staff भी, administration भी, parents भी, बच्चे भी, कि हम एक ऐसा प्लेटफॉर्म बनाएं एजुकेशन का, स्पेशली इन कोविड टाइम्स, जहां हम खुल के बात कर सकते हैं, जहां पे हमें शर्म ना आए कि मुझे डिप्रेशन हो रहा है या मुझे एंजाइटी हो रही है, मुझे घबराहट हो रही है, जहां पे हमें शर्म फील ना हो. मुझे लगता है कि हम इन सिंगापुर की एक बहुत ही कंजर्वेटिव सोसाइटी है, इट्स हेवीली चाइनीज एशियन कम्युनिटी, जहां पे इमोशनल वीकनेस को अच्छा नहीं समझा जाता. बहुत बड़ा स्टिग्मा है सिंगापुर में. तो उस पॉपुलेशन को लेके जब हम आगे चलते हैं और जब हम I have a few other clinicians that we work together, I go around telling people how I am emotionally struggling. कि कितनी रातें, my parents are in Pakistan और अगर वो बीमार हैं तो मैं कितनी रातें रोती हूँ, and there is nothing wrong. इसमें कोई शर्म की बात नहीं है, इसमें कोई आपकी weakness नहीं है, इसका ये मतलब नहीं है कि I'm a bad therapist. So I think the agenda moving forward in COVID times for university students and administration and teachers is to help them normalize mental health issues, because we're all suffering. I think कोई कह रहा है कि जी मैं तो बिल्कुल सफर नहीं कर रहा, ना मुझे कोई issues है. I think that's very rare. और हम लोगों में से कोई भी robots तो है नहीं, हम सारे इंसान हैं, thinking, feeling. तो उसमें सबसे बड़ा जो हाथ है, which I'm training some teachers in schools and universities here, वहां पे मैं उनको वर्कशॉप्स कराती हूँ जहां वो शर्म फील ना करें, बल्कि आके बोलें कि हाँ साइमा, तुमने शेयर किया that you were crying the other night, I want to share कि मैं भी स्ट्रगल कर रही हूँ डिप्रेशन के साथ. एंड जब आपके बच्चे, आपके स्टूडेंट्स, आपकी ऑर्गेनाइजेशन सुनेगी कि the person who's sitting at the top, it has no shame, is actually very confident talking about their mental health challenges, they will feel a lot more comfortable coming out and expressing. And the biggest, I think, healing factor in mental health problems is that our inability to talk. हमें खुल के बात करने की इजाजत ही नहीं मिलती, इतना बुरा समझा जाता है इन चीजों को. So मेरा रोल जो अभी तक है as a professional, as a clinician, and I don't know many people know, but when I was younger I had serious mental health issues, and that's how I decided to become a clinician. And every time I'm invited as a speaker to talk to kids in universities or schools, I start with my story. I start with my story about how messed up I was, how unstable I was, and how I talked myself out of my rubbish, and here I am today. So it's a message of hope, and especially in COVID times, that's what organizations and universities and teachers and students and their parents need to hear, that there is hope. All we need to do is come out and speak, and the more we speak, the more opportunities we're going to get to find the right solution or the right help. So I think I have a timer here. Am I going over, Aisha? I'm going to stop otherwise here.
No, you can take 1 to 2 more minutes.
Okay, so I'm also in conversation with Dr. Nusrat, and hopefully we'll connect sometime soon to figure out a platform where we can design a mental health first aid model for Pakistani students and organizations and teachers, where we can train the trainer, and hoping that it would be an online portal where people can log in and go through the modules and give an exam at the end of the modules, and they can be certified as youth mental health first aiders, to understand कि अगर कोई university student या co-worker आपको लग रहे हैं science के, they are struggling, what is the protocol you can take care of, what is the protocol you can use जिससे आप अपने co-worker की, अपने student की मदद कर सकते हैं. और उसके लिए आपको psychologist और clinician होने की जरूरत नहीं है. but we are going to create the awareness and step-by-step strategies for people who have no background in psychology to at least understand and implement that model in homes, in schools, in universities. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Ms. Saima Salman. It was really, really very awesome to hear from you as always. Now I would like to invite, I would really say that it's my immense pleasure to call out the next speaker, that is my mentor as well, Professor Dr. Rafia Rafiq. She is currently serving as Director, Institute of Applied Psychology, University of the Punjab. She has an extensive research work and awarded by HEC for the Best Paper Award. Madam, the floor is all yours.
Thank you very much, Aisha, and Assalamu alaikum to all worthy teachers and colleagues. I joined late, but whatever I have heard, I think so lots and lots of hope exists here. As far as we can say that our educational system is concerned. As Saima was talking about the mental health issues, we also started our first helpline, and we did a research in which we did find out that the students were suffering from a number of issues like internet connectivity, and there was other issues related to stress, sleep issues, disturbances. So what I personally feel is that the mental health first aid is extremely important if we want our students to learn, because until and unless their mental health issues are not addressed, they won't be able to study and they won't be able to excel in their studies. So that was just a bit, but what I would be focusing on is the inadequacies and inequality of the education system during COVID era. The crisis has exposed many inadequacies and inequalities in our education systems, as everybody knows, from access to the broadband and computers needed for online education and the supportive environments needed to focus on learning, up to the misalignment between resources and needs that we all did face. So there is a paradigm shift in education too, that due to this COVID, e-learning has become mandatory component of all educational institutions like schools, colleges, and universities in and around the world due to pandemic crisis. And this deadly situation has flipped out the offline teaching process, though we are coming back to the face-to-face classes, at least in some of the cities of Pakistan. So if we have to focus on certain things, much of the points have been addressed, but I would like to talk about the new normal. We are told that this is the new normal and there is no going back to how we used to live before. So I still am quite skeptical about this thing. Therefore, we need to fundamentally transform ourselves in order to adapt to these new conditions as well as demands. Before proceeding further, I would like to talk about a few of the strategies of different countries in handling educational challenges. Like one of the strategies which I liked was started by Australia. They funded those who were looking to improve their skills or retain those skills. They reduced the cost of taking short online courses, exempted study loans for domestic students for 6 months, ensured funding of domestic students even if enrollments dropped them out. And in Canada, likewise, to double students' grants and broaden the eligibility of financial assistance, and additional support in the form of scholarship funding extension for students and postdoctoral researchers affected by the COVID-19 pandemic. So even in countries like Italy, distant learning support measures announced by the Italian government in March 2020, equipped with digital platforms and tools for distance learning, lend digital devices to less well-off students, and train teaching staff in methodologies and techniques for distance learning. I think so this is something with which we can relate. So extra funding to cover costs arising from responses to the pandemic crisis at the school and university level. Directing institute, I myself received applications from a number of students who were not even able to pay 2,000 to 3,000 rupees for their fee. So we need to work on these things. So emergency financial grants to cover partial or total course related costs for less well-off students is very important. Specifically, if we talk about students studying in this government institutes. In New Zealand, measures included increasing the amount of student loans and providing additional support to students to cover extra courses, course-related costs. So the call to transform education, universities need to enhance internet bandwidth, which everybody was talking about, enlarge the capacity of data centers, purchase licensed e-learning tools, and provide training for students and professionals on needed IT skills. Because when we shifted to the online education system, I myself was not very well versed about different IT skills. So I had to learn through trial and error. If we are to continue with this, we need to make our teachers skillful. Online training and skill enhancement workshops should be emphasized to compensate for on-campus activities. Effective and responsive IT technical support and troubleshooting services should be provided to students, especially during quizzes and exams, because that was a big challenge for us also when we were taking exams online through LMS and other systems. So developing and maintaining robust communication strategies with staff, faculty, and students are essential in keeping all entities informed and apprised of next steps in the transition, training, and ongoing support. So there are certain recommendations to the instructors also. Strong effort should be made to design online courses rather than moving face-to-face materials to a course into the online environment, what we did previously, because we didn't have any online courses. Interactivity and feedback should be emphasized during the online classes to increase students' attendance, where virtual chat rooms and forums for students and students to instructors should be created. There should be clear instructions concerning exams, quizzes, and assignments to inform learners of how to get help. Because the students reported that they were a number of because of all these things. They were unable to appear in the exams, and we had to train the students also along with the faculty. So what the focus should be on planning and teaching resources, teaching methodology, and mentor teaching observation using visual technology, multimedia. And we need to unlock the hidden potential. That is, we need to further refocus on the reading skills, writing skills, standards for the behavioral and professional practices that might have changed because of this COVID situation. Teachers' community relationship that needs to be enhanced during these stressful times, training students for further development, and creating an effective relationship. This is very important. Even after listening to Saima, I can say that it is extremely important to focus on this effective relationship between students and teachers, as well as students among themselves. And we need to redesign and reframe our classroom management and assessment system. We need to identify the strengths, assessing the learning needs. We need to keep on assessing and reassessing the learning needs. We need to focus on behavioral approaches for teachers, motivational approaches for teachers, study habits for teachers, self-evaluation of teachers. That is an extremely important component, specifically if we have to shift to e-learning and e-teaching. So we need to focus on psychological aspects of teaching, like time management skills, anxiety management skills. We need to focus on stress management skills and all the other counseling and other skills that might be helpful for the students as well as the faculty. So recommendations to the portal designers, synchronous and asynchronous forms, blogs, message boards, and chat rooms are all possible tools to reach the needed interactivity levels to enhance retention rate of students, support students in need, and replace individual face-to-face support and mentoring provided in conventional learning on campus classrooms. So do I have more time, Aisha?
Madam, you can take one more minute.
Okay, so I would just like to focus that our higher educational institutions involved in professional education need to focus on the better employability of our graduates. That is very important. And the basics of education will not change. Quality of education so that a professional can contribute to the development of society. And as well as in post-COVID environment, all professional courses need to make a balance between skills and theory. That is very important. This needs to be focused again and again. And courses need to regularly upgrade skill imparted by them, as more manufacturing and other areas are expected to grow in post-COVID period. Demand for professionals will also increase. So thank you very much for listening to me. And thank you, Dr. Nashi, for such an informative webinar. And thank you, Aisha, for conducting the webinar.
Thank you so much, Professor Rafiq. That was such an enlightening talk, especially that you have highlighted the need of reassessing the learning need and the relationship and the strong bonding between the teacher-student. So that's a very important point. Thank you so much to be the part of this webinar. And now moving towards our last facilitator, that is Professor Dr. Saima Daud. Professor Daud is currently serving as the Director, Center for Clinical Psychology, University of the Punjab. She's handling the whole center on the administrative level as well as the educational level very beautifully. We have got multiple chances to learn from her, and it's a pleasure to listen to you again. So Professor Daud, it's over to you.
Assalamu alaikum to all my worthy seniors, teachers, colleagues, as well as to all the participants. First of all, I would like to congratulate the organizers and administration of Rashid Latif Medical College to organize this webinar. And I must say that they may not only organize the webinar, but also invited distinguished experts to share their thoughts, experiences, and words of wisdom. And I'm also honored being part of this webinar, and they gave me this opportunity to share my views. Today's topic of university education and its future related to Pakistan is very important, and the very important and practical nature of these days. And I feel that till my turn, all issues and challenges related to university education during COVID time have already shared and addressed so comprehensively by my all worthy seniors and teachers. However, I would like to share my views and experiences related to university education. I think as we all are sharing again and again that this COVID has changed the lifestyle around the globe, including like family life, work life, or a student or academician life. And it affected every individual, may it be a person is resourceful or not, or he or she may belong to any socioeconomic class or living in either developing or developed country. And this pandemic affected education sector, and it compelled all the custodians, like including teaching faculty, office staff, and students to learn and test new tools and systems for online teaching and learning. Classroom teaching has been replaced by, we may say that, distant teaching and learning. And we all are academicians and all in higher education institution. This shift from face-to-face teaching to this online teaching was taken as a big challenge from both perspectives, like may it be a course instructor or a student. Because for course instructor, as this issue has already addressed by the worthy speakers, that use of new mode of teaching, then access to all technical infrastructure, then competency to use it was like needed extra attention and time. And alhamdulillah, in all universities, like we have like overcome all these issues, and these issues were handled quite adequately. And when we talk about students, then I may say that most of, like, you would agree with me that mental health of the students greatly affected, and already Saima Salman has talked about it, and Dr. Nusrat Hussain highlighted all these issues, and Dr. Najma Najam and Dr. Rukhsana. So this sudden shift was having so many reasons of their frustration, or you may say that their mental problems, because learning mode was changed. And like we are sitting in public sector university, and the students were having lack of resources, and students were living in remote areas. They were experiencing this connectivity issues, and they were having problems to attend the classes or to like submit their assignments on time. So education evaluation mode was changed, and in PU we use this Moodle software for exams, and like we experienced and we observed two categories of students, two groups of students. One group who is like motivated and interested in learning, and they were having like anxieties and frustration or irritability and lots of concern with their grades or with their performance, and they used to experience these like anxieties and share these anxieties or frustrations with the teachers as well. And the other group who was not much interested in the studies, starting wasting time on internet instead of attending the classes. So different type of experiences with teachers and with faculty. When categorically we talk about education in university, then I would say that in addition to all problems being shared and reported, the university teaching is meant for research and training, and the two key components of university teaching got affected badly. Dr. Najma already pointed out about the research, that we have shifted our research to online data collection, and which may have introduced unnoticed covariates or outliers, or which may have affected the findings of the research. And then this online data collection excluded marginalized group, the groups like who were not having digital literacy or poor access, or they are socioeconomically deprived. They were not able to participate through this online data collection. And like being the institution of higher education, we may say that research is a necessary key component, and we experience problems in conducting a satisfactory level of research while being at home. So same is for the training. May it be training related to clinical psychology, may it be related to training of a medical doctor, or training in the laboratory in scientific disciplines. Till now, I think everyone has struggled to some extent according to his or her role. And though we all have worked out many solutions, but still to overcome the hurdles, lots of work still need to be done. So in higher education, institutions need to be armed with proper infrastructure for the online mode, because COVID, its threats and its related fear all are still there, and we need to develop acceptance and coping strategies related to that. So this is from my end, because I think all issues have comprehensively addressed and highlighted, and we have discussed. So I am not going to repeat. Thank you so much.
Many thanks, Professor Daud. That was really enlightening, that you have highlighted things and summarized all the things that we have talked throughout the day. So now I would like to say thanks to all of the facilitators, and for the formal thank you note, I would like to invite Dr. Nashi, so that she can say a thank you note to these facilitators. Dr. Nashi, over to you.
Thank you very much, Aisha and Zaima. You have been excellent moderators, and you have helped me a lot in this organizing this webinar. I'm very grateful to Professor Ayan Hassan, Professor Dr. Najma, Professor Talit Pasha, Professor Rafia Rafiq, Professor Saima Daud, Max Babri, rather Max, and my very dear friend Saima Salman, and my teacher, my mentor, and a very dear friend, Professor Dr. Rukhsana Kausar, and Professor Emeritus, Professor Najma Najm. I'm really honored that you all were here on my single humble request. I'm also thankful to Miss Amna Noor Malik, who is a very dear friend too, that she was also there, and she happily gave her consent. I am really indebted to you all that despite your busy schedules and Max being away on a holiday, Saima being away, and Professor Nusrat, who has always been a motivating source for PIL and RLMC, and he keeps engaging us on these things and forcing us. He is maybe the spirit behind. Anyway, so I won't take much of a time. It has been a long webinar, and I would like to say a lot of thanks to you all. I am honored, I am privileged, and I'm humbled. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much all for being here with us and attending this auspicious webinar. So I hope we will meet soon again to arrange such an excellent webinar again. Thank you so much. Allah Hafiz.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much.
Thank you.